Hi, my name is Jordan Thompson. I'm the Director of Operations and Planning with the City of Lacombe. This is a pre-recorded presentation highlighting the outcomes out of the solid waste review that had occurred over the course of 2019 and concluded earlier this year. This is a presentation primarily meant for council, but it is being published more widely to the public for information as well. And so I'm just going to switch over to a different screen and we'll get into the presentation. Okay, so as I've said, my name is Jordan Thompson, the Director of Operations and Planning, presenting the waste review results and recommendations. The purpose of this presentation is to recommend that Council accept the solid waste review and that Council endorse the solid waste review implementation plan. Now, this document that you're seeing here, along with the full report from Tetra-Tech, are both available via the links either in the description or in the post, depending on how you've accessed this video, but they are available. And certainly they are meant to be companion documents with this presentation. So right off the hop, the administration engaged Tetra-Tech to help it understand its solid waste system and to benchmark the value of that service against that of comparable municipalities, to develop a long-term plan for managing the city's solid waste in a sustainable, fiscally responsible manner, and to engage the public about the future of the solid waste collection in Lacombe. And so those are the goals and objectives of this review. And those have been achieved through the solid waste report. And a number of the chapters cover various aspects of those goals, which are listed on the screen now. However, overall, there are no significant changes recommended to the way the city operates its solid waste system, especially for the residential sector. There were a number of areas of improvement that have been recommended by Tetra-Tech as well as by administration, which do have a substantial impact on the structure behind the scenes of the solid waste system. But there are a few front-facing recommendations as well. And throughout this presentation, we'll get into what that means a little bit more. But certainly right off the hop, I wanted to be clear that we're not recommending any significant changes to how the solid waste system operates. And what that means is where there are current lane bins, those would remain, and where there are rollout bins, those would remain in place, and then the Wolf Creek Recycle Depot would remain in place as well. So those are the main aspects of our recommendations, but certainly there are some significant changes that will help the system overall, not only from a cost perspective, but from an operations perspective as well. So one of the most significant findings that Tetra-Tech revealed was the city's cost of disposal for solid waste is significantly higher than those waste authorities in the region. And so this disposal cost is a major aspect of our solid waste utility. It's approximately $1 million a year, a little shy of $1 million this year, but is projected to exceed $1 million in the next few years. And that line item in the solid waste budget is the single largest line item within the solid waste utilities budget. And so having a disposal cost that is significantly higher than the region does have an impact on the rates. And one thing that Tetra-Tech did review was the comparable utility rates across the board, and Lacombe's rates are higher than the average. And so before you here is a list of comparable municipalities and their disposal rates. And as you can see through the Lacombe Regional Waste Services Commission, the city pays approximately $182 per ton. And then the other waste authorities are significantly less than that, $28 per ton, $102 per ton, $70 per ton. And so certainly this does raise some questions, and it is something that we have recommended be looked at with the Solid Waste Commission. So maybe at this point I'll just take a quick moment to just highlight the solid waste structure and how the Commission plays into the solid waste system. And so the City of Lacombe collects waste from residential customers with its own garbage trucks. That waste is then transferred to a third party, which is the Lacombe Regional Solid Waste Commission. The Solid Waste Commission, they are in charge of disposing that material. Now they have a special landfill that can take only certain types of material called rubble, and that is stored on site on the Commission site grounds. The rest of the material is then compacted and then transferred to the final disposal site in Camrose. Now it could be any disposal site for them, but they have a contract with West Dried Meat Lake for disposal of the material through their transfer stations. And so the closest transfer station to Lacombe that the Commission owns and operates is the Prentice Transfer Station, but they have others within Lacombe County as well. So in order to benchmark where the city's solid waste system is against other communities, there's a lot of data that was collected by Tetra-Tech, and I'm just going to go over that here and summarize that data. There is a lot more in the report, but certainly what I'm going to cover here is some of the more relevant and more interesting points that they discovered. So overall, the city's solid waste is generated from three main sectors: the residential sector, which is your homes, your apartments, townhouses, anything like that, anything where people live. There's approximately 4,600 households within Lacombe. There is the institutional, commercial, or industrial sector, which is often combined and called the ICI sector, which includes approximately 300 customers. And then there's the construction and demolition sector. So when we look at the amount of solid waste that is generated from each of those sectors, it's important to understand, or try to understand, the composition of that waste. And so when Tetra-Tech looked at the composition of the waste, they found that it can be broken down into four broad categories: recyclables, municipal solid waste, compostable organic waste, and e-waste and hazardous waste. So overall, when it comes to recyclables, Tetra-Tech estimates that the amount of recyclables that all three sectors generate comprises of approximately 28% of the solid waste, all solid waste generated within the city. And same with the municipal solid waste, about 27% of all of the solid waste generated is truly municipal solid waste. About 42% is compostable organic waste, and about 3% is e-waste or hazardous waste. Now, when you compare that against the actual solid waste measured in the stream, it is fairly interesting. So the recyclables, when you actually measure the amount of recyclables that go through the recycling streams within the city, you only get 15% of the total solid waste rate, which means the other 13% is not making its way into the recycling stream. It is either more likely going through the solid waste stream or just not getting into the recycling stream directly. And so that means that there is approximately twice as much recyclables than what being produced by the city than what is actually making its way into the recycling stream. And then similarly with the municipal solid waste, there is, when we measure it, it comprises of 61% of the total weight. And so when you compare that against the estimated overall composition, it shows that it's double, more or less double what it could be. It could be less, meaning there's very likely much more recyclables and organic waste making its way into the solid waste stream and not being separated into those other streams. Compostable organic waste, same thing. It's estimated to be much higher at 42% than what we're seeing in the actual waste stream at 24%. And then the e-waste and hazardous waste, it's estimated to be at 3%. We have indicated this is unknown. We do have e-waste programs and hazardous waste roundup programs, but those materials are not weighed. They're tracked on a type of material. For instance, we will track the number of light bulbs, or the number of computers, or the number of paint cans. It's just not weighed, so it's difficult for us to compare that against the other streams. But it's likely comparable. It's a small number, but certainly it's something that we're mindful of as we move forward when we're comparing various waste compositions. And so this graphic on the screen helps to illustrate how the city's solid waste system actually operates. So the recycling stream goes through primarily the Wolf Creek Recycle Depot. That is collected by a contractor. Currently it's Waste Management. And that contractor, they own the bins, and they rent them to the city of Lacombe, takes that material to their recycling and sorting facility in Red Deer. They sort that material into the various plastics, papers, metals that are resellable, and then sell it to the wholesale market. Then next to that is the garbage stream, which is your typical garbage pickup. The city of Lacombe picks up material from residents and takes that to the transfer station. From commercial customers, some commercial customers contract the city of Lacombe to do that work. Other commercial customers contract a private hauler to collect that material. But all that material should be taken to the Prentice transfer station and disposed of there, or from there transferred to Dried Meat Lake. And then that becomes the final resting place, the landfill. Now, between the Wolf Creek Recycle Depot and the garbage pickup, you'll notice there's an arrow. Through the sorting process, there is mixed recyclables that are not deemed to be, I guess, viable on the wholesale market. And so those materials, it's up to the discretion of the sorter, in this case Waste Management, to determine that, whether those materials are viable or not, and some of that material does end up in the landfill. Moving on, the green bin program, we have we call it source separated green bins. Those are throughout the community. That material is collected by the city and brought to our contractors' facility, where they turn that into compost. We also have green collections at the Wolf Creek Recycle Depot currently, and that material is either collected by the city or the contractor and given its end use at the contractor's facility. Some diseased wood or material that is just not viable to be composted or chipped does get transported to the Prentice transfer station for disposal. And then, of course, the last stream is through the city's waste collection events, the electronics recycling, year-round service. There's a toxic e-waste roundup annually, trash to treasure events, and the community cleanup events. These are all a part and components of the solid waste system, and they're all available for residents. So overall, the city disposes approximately 6,000 tons of waste at the Prentice Transfer Station and diverts approximately 3,900 tons of waste annually through the Wolf Creek Recycle Depot, the downtown cardboard collection bins, the green yard waste bins. Now, when we compare Lacombe to the greater Alberta population, the Alberta population produces approximately 1 ton of waste per capita annually. So that translates into Lacombe producing approximately 14,000 tons of waste per year from all sources, from commercial, from residential, and from the construction and demolition sector. Unfortunately, we are unable to determine or derive weights from all sources, primarily because the Lacombe Regional Solid Waste Commission does not record weights from all its haulers, meaning when a private collector drops material off at the commissions, they don't record that weight and then differentiate where that weight came from. And so it makes it difficult for us to get a complete picture of all the actual solid waste that is derived in Lacombe because of that. But we are able to look at some data, and as you can see on the pie chart on the right, there's a further breakdown of kind of where the material has come from between 2013 and 2018. So in the second half of 2019, when the city did discontinue its curbside recycling program, we found that 25% less recycling was diverted from the garbage stream, which means overall the recycling diversion rate went down by 25%. But at the same time, the usage of the Wolf Creek Recycle Depot increased by 75%. So this really shows that residents are making a concerted effort to recycle and continue to participate in the recycling program, despite it being significantly less convenient to do so. And then the commercial cardboard collection program, which is right now only available in the downtown core, saw an increase in usage by approximately 8%. So when Tetra-Tech reviewed our operations, they followed the drivers, they sat with them, they looked at various challenges that the drivers face that might impact an efficient operation of the system from a driver's perspective. They did have a number of notable findings that are included in the report. Overall, they found that the communal lane bin system is operationally efficient, which means it's quick, and it allows for the collection of material from a number of houses at once without having to stop for every household. So for instance, the lane bins generally are spaced out per 4 to 6 households, and in one stop the garbage truck can collect all that material, tip the bin, put it back, and continue on. If there was a lane bin, if there was an individual cart system, that would mean stops at every house, and likely stops on both sides of the street as well, because of the individual cart system. This would result in essentially the doubling of the route lengths. And this adds cost, this adds time to the system, and so the current system is operationally efficient. It does have its drawbacks. The bins require ongoing maintenance, and we are aware of material being dropped off at those bins that is not supposed to be there. but certainly from an operations perspective, those lane bins are efficient. However, when we look at the amount of material that is being collected by our trucks every year over the past 5 to 10 years, we have found that the trucks are just not as full as they used to be when they're being hauled to the transfer station. Meaning over time, each truck is getting lighter and lighter and lighter. And this is something that is a bit concerning because it does point to a system becoming less and less efficient over time. And so that could be because of material is just genuinely lighter, a lot more boxes, a lot more lighter material being put into the trucks. But that is a factor that needs to be considered in our route development. And so over time, the community has developed, new neighborhoods have been constructed, and the garbage trucks routes have just kind of been tacked on and added on to the existing routes. And so we're at a point now where we need to look at the whole city again, look at what the operational challenges are. There are a number of areas where trucks have to back up, or they have to go through the same area twice in order to capture all of the areas they need to. And so we need to look at those areas again and make sure that those routes are efficient. And so that is something that Tetra-Tech did identify in their report. And so we will be looking at that as well. And it is included in our recommendations to redo the routes in the city. So as I alluded to earlier, the cost of the solid waste system to residents in Lacombe is higher than comparable municipalities. As you can see in this chart, Lacombe's monthly rate is $31.76, and the other comparable municipalities are lower. Now, this is only for the residential sector. The city of Lacombe is the only municipality that provides any services to the ICI sector. The other municipalities completely contract that out or leave that up to the individual business owner to hire a private hauler. And so comparing against that is difficult because there just isn't the data that we can get from those municipalities. They just simply don't know. And so we are focusing on residential on this chart. We are, in the comparison, they've looked at variable garbage options. Now, all of these are outlined in much more detail in Tetra-Tech's report. This is just a summary on the screen here now. Variable garbage options, meaning can you pick, as a resident, various garbage sizes, or do you get a rebate if you have a smaller garbage bin, or are you charged a penalty if you have more garbage than what is allowed? Those are all kind of captured under this category of variable garbage options. And so most of the municipalities do not. High River does. They have a variable garbage option in High River. Then when we look at the recycling programs and the green and compost waste programs, most communities, in fact all of the ones that we compared against, had some form of a recycling program or a compost and green waste program. When we compare curbside versus drop-off, it was about half and half. Lacombe's is a drop-off program only now. Camrose is drop-off. Fort Saskatchewan and Cochrane are curbside programs. High River's a drop-off program, and Beaumont's a curbside program for recycling. And then compost and green waste. Lacombe has both. We have a drop-off and we have lane bins, which isn't exactly curbside, but certainly is a medium, really a unique offering that Lacombe has that the other municipalities don't, where we have the green bins throughout the community. And so that's not quite curbside convenience, but it is better than drop-off from a convenience point of view. Camrose, Fort Saskatchewan, and Cochrane all had curbside compost programs. High River had a drop-off program, and Beaumont has a curbside program. So when you look at the overall diversion rates from these municipalities, when you look at the overall waste generated from the city of Lacombe, and then you look at how much material is being separated out and taken to other locations besides the landfill, that being through our recycling program and through the green bin program and through the cardboard collection program that is currently operating, we see a diversion rate of approximately 39%. And then when you compare that against other municipalities, Camrose at 34%, Fort Saskatchewan at 45%, Cochrane at 61%. High River, we weren't able to get more recent data from High River. Beaumont at 34%. We can see that Lacombe is about average, and its diversion rate is not falling below the average. It is in line with comparable municipalities. If you recall earlier when we talked about the actual composition of the solid waste, I said that we're seeing more solid waste than what is actually being produced, more solid waste weight than what we should be seeing, meaning some of those other materials, the compost and the recycling, are making their way into the waste stream when they don't need to be. And so that shows there certainly is room for increased diversion. Other municipalities such as Fort Saskatchewan and Cochrane certainly have shown that with concerted effort it can be done. These communities have strong education programs and a very focused effort to reducing increasing their diversion rates in their communities. So there is a challenge with doing that in Lacombe. It is unique to Lacombe and the region, which I will go over. It has to do with the per capita requisition, so the per capita fee that we are charged by the Solid Waste Commission. And so I'll get into that a little bit more later, but just know that right now our diversion rate is in line with the average. So in 2019, Tetra-Tech led a series of public engagement activities in the community. They attended farmers markets and a couple markets at the LMC. And the city, the Tetra-Tech and the city distributed a survey to residents and asking them about what they see as the future of the solid waste system in Lacombe. And so altogether, 652 responses were received to that survey, which is a very good response rate. So well done to those who filled out that survey. The top three priorities for a solid waste system that were identified in that survey are recycling, cost, and convenience. Said although residents said they would support modest cost increases to the solid waste system, when we dive into the individual sections, there wasn't a notable support for a cost increase in any one specific area. But there was significant support for a curbside recycling program and notable support for a three-stream curbside collection system. So these results certainly influenced the administration's recommendation, particularly around recommendations 5 and 6, which are around the Wolf Creek Recycle Depot and keeping it operational. You'll notice that our recommendation is not to reintroduce the curbside recycling program, nor introduce a curbside three-stream collection system. And that I'll get into that when I get into the recommendation section next. But it is to do with it's difficult, very difficult for the city of Lacombe to provide the assurance to our residents that the recycling industry or the recycling system, once it leaves the city of Lacombe, is actually being recycled. It is just simply, it's a cross-jurisdictional, very, very large, more regional, provincial, and federal issue that makes it extremely difficult for the city itself to fully tackle, and thus for the significant cost that it's going to require to implement these programs or reinstate these programs at this point, it's hard for us to recommend that cost be borne by our residents when we can't provide that assurance, or there's not a regulatory framework that can provide that assurance. And so I'll get into that a little bit more on the recommendations. So at this point, I'm just going to get right into a number of the issues that were revealed by Tetra-Tech, and then through discussions with Tetra-Tech, issues that administration is bringing forward for council's consideration. The first one being the per capita requisition structure charged by the Lacombe Regional Waste Services Commission. So that commission is a separate body. It is comprised of municipal members. Lacombe is a member, and the way that the commission covers its costs is that it charges a fee on a population basis to all of its municipal members. So the city of Lacombe, at approximately 14,000 people, is charged a cost per person, and that is just invoiced to the city of Lacombe, and that's how they make their money and cover their costs. The challenge with that is when we look at diversion rates, when we look at waste reduction initiatives, if the city of Lacombe were to become a leader in the region, in the province, and reduce its waste generation by, let's just say, by 25%, because of the per capita requisition structure, it would not result in any savings to the city of Lacombe. It would reduce some cost on the commission's side, but those savings would be diluted amongst all the members. The city of Lacombe doesn't get a cheaper rate because it reduced its waste. It gets charged the same rate. And then conversely, if the city of Lacombe generates 25% more waste over the next few years, then again, it is not charged, it's not penalized for that. And so the incentive system for the city and in turn residents to reduce waste just does not align with the actual cost structure. And so that makes it very difficult for the city to develop programs to incentivize or to align the waste reduction targets, or to even develop waste reduction targets because of this system. It just simply won't yield a benefit that can be measured. The other aspect of the per capita requisition structure is residents, or rather private haulers who operate for commercial customers within the city. When they go to the Solid Waste Commission, they can report themselves as coming from the city of Lacombe and not be charged a tipping fee at the Solid Waste Commission. Like, they're not charged separately. Conversely, they can also go, that also means that they can go to, theoretically, other municipalities, to other commercial customers that are outside the boundary of the Waste Commission's membership, mix that material with the material in the within one of the member municipalities, and then drop the whole thing off at the Waste Commission for no cost. And so that means that the costs borne by the Waste Commission are being transferred to the member municipalities wholly. And because in Lacombe, commercial businesses can contract that waste collection service to a private hauler, those costs are never passed on or covered by the commercial sector. And so that means all of the costs are passed on to the residents. And so that has the effect of raising utility rates, because there is essentially residents are subsidizing commercial garbage collection. Commercial garbage collectors can charge a very competitive rate, or they could charge a very competitive rate to commercial collectors or commercial customers because they don't have to charge disposal fees, or they can charge really anything they feel will result in a contract and not pay the city of Lacombe or not pay the waste commission, so that the disposal costs can be factored into the rate. And so that is a concern, an issue that Tetra-Tech has highlighted in their report, and is something that further work is required to resolve. So our recommendation to council is to develop a utility rate structure that ensures all benefiting sectors share in the solid waste requisition costs. And then our second recommendation that is related is we want to advocate the Lacombe Regional Waste Services Commission conduct an audit of their current financial and operations model. And the purpose of this audit is to review revenue and expenses, identify existing fees charged to private haulers, and identify whether their financial and operations model should be modified from a per capita model to a weight-based model. So there are a number of utility structures that we can develop. Our preference certainly is to work within the existing utility structure and advocate for changes at the commission level. However, the city may, if need be, may implement changes within the city of Lacombe in order to capture those costs, those disposal costs from the commercial sector, in order to fairly distribute the expenses to them as well. Because currently it's primarily, in the vast majority, residents paying for it all. Okay, moving on to issue number 2, entitled the shortfall in diversionary credits. Currently, the commission does offer what they call a diversionary credit for recyclable material. So this is in principle is in the right direction. This is the commission charges the solid waste all members on a per capita basis cost to operate their system, operate the commission. But members who can demonstrate that they have diverted recyclable material away from the solid waste stream get some money back. And so the city of Lacombe, through its curbside program, and certainly now through the Wolf Creek Recycle Depot, is able to show that we've divert approximately 1,000 tons of material in 2019, and that resulted in a diversionary credit of $61,000. So that doesn't cover costs at all. That is significantly short of what the city's costs are to provide that service, but certainly it is in the right direction. And one thing that is unique about the city of Lacombe that I highlighted earlier is that it has source separated green bins. So all of that grass, that those garden tops that end up in the green bins, are not ending up in the waste stream. And so at this time, the Solid Waste Commission does not recognize that material as eligible for a diversionary credit. And the recommendation that we are making to council is to advocate for changes to recognize that material. That material is genuinely being diverted from the waste stream. It otherwise would end up in the waste stream. And in principle, it should be recognized. Certainly other members within the Solid Waste Commission who don't have this offering, their residents are very likely putting their garden hops right into their garbage, and it's being processed that way. And so we are paying to have it source separated, and that should be an eligible diversionary credit through the Solid Waste Commission. So for context, the city received $61,000 in diversionary credits from the Commission for recyclable material only in 2019. And if the green bins were included in that, then that diversionary credit would have been approximately $128,000. And so that is something that it's not a significant sum of money for the utility itself, but certainly it is additional revenue or savings, depending how you look at it, on within the utility that should be explored. So our recommendation to council is to, again, advocate for diversionary credits for source-separated yard and garden waste. And then moving forward, we do know that we will be, because the overall recycling weights have gone down, we are expecting slightly less diversionary credit for recycling in 2021. So we need to make that adjustment in the budget. So issue number 3 is regarding improvements to the recycling system. So this is interesting. The Wolf Creek Recycle Depot costs the city approximately $300 per ton on average to operate. And this includes all the processing fees, the bin rental, the transportation of the bins to and from the Red Deer Materials Recycling Facility. And as I highlighted earlier, the diversionary credit from the Solid Waste Commission doesn't nearly cover our costs to operate that system. So currently the diversionary rate is $63.77 per ton. So that results in a net cost to the city of $236 per ton to operate the Wolf Creek Recycle Depot. For information, the curbside recycling program would cost the city $532 per ton today, including the diversionary credit. So the cost of operating that service is significantly higher than and almost double the cost of the Wolf Creek Recycle Depot. And so that's where it becomes challenging to recommend implement today. And that cost makes sense in the context of the assurance, if there is assurance that is provided, that material is being recycled, and but in this environment, it is difficult to recommend those additional costs be passed on to residents for that service. So there is little financial incentive to continue operating the depot even as is, especially since even with the city's high disposal costs, it's still it's from a pure financial perspective, it's cheaper to dispose of that material. However, residents, because of the residents' response to the usage of the Wolf Creek Recycle Depot and how residents operated, had indicated that they would be in support of modest fee increases, and because the residents supported through the survey indicated their support for recycling priorities within the city of Lacombe, we believe that the Wolf Creek Recycle Depot should remain. It is something that is well utilized. There are some improvements that are required to make it a better site. For instance, signage was improved there last year. We heard that feedback and those comments from the public. So signage has recently been improved. We are also wanting to move forward with improving the containment of the yard and garden brush that is on site. We want to install interlocking concrete blocks to help organize that material and keep it from developing into a unwieldy stockpile. So some communities have seen significant success improving their diversionary rates at a reasonable cost, but because the materials end use of the material is not known, there's really a requirement for greater provincial and federal oversight on the recycling industry. And as I indicated before, the supply chain of recycling is just simply too complex and too cross-jurisdictional to making it impossible for Lacombe to track. There are bodies that are advocating right now for the development of increased provincial and federal oversight, and that is through the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association, AUMA, which advocates to the provincial government, and FCM, which advocates to the federal government. And both of those organizations have adopted resolutions from municipalities to increase their advocacy efforts recently, in 2019 and 2020. Primarily, they are focusing on a particular type of regulation called extended producer responsibilities, or EPR, which generally requires a levy. So the province or the federal government would charge producers or importers of material a cost, and that cost, depending on that, would be set based on the type of material that is being either produced or imported, and it would be set based on essentially how recyclable that material is. And so material that is highly recyclable would have a lower cost or no cost. Material that is not recyclable or very difficult to repurpose would have a higher cost. And so that would be levied against the manufacturers or the importers of that material. That money would go back into the recycling system and would be used to fund a more regional recycling system, either province-wide or within regions of the province, or to help offset the costs with municipalities of their current recycling system. And so that is something that is in place across the country, but is not in place currently in Alberta. And so AUMA is advocating for that on behalf of municipalities in the province, and FCM is advocating for improvements to EPR regulation across the country to develop a more harmonized approach. Because the usage of the Wolf Creek Recycle Depot is shared between the City of Lacombe and the County of Lacombe, the county does cost share in that system. So in 2020, we are currently budgeting the county to contribute $36,900, or about $40 per ton. And that was based on a survey of actual users that was done at the depot some time ago. And so we are just saying to council and here that we need to refresh that survey in a few years. At the next opportunity would be to do so during the next ICF update. So to conclude on these issues, we have a number of recommendations here, 5 recommendations. We will maintain the operation of the Wolf Creek Recycle Depot with improvements to the containment of yard waste and brush. Starting in 2021, we want to issue an RFP, which is a request for proposal, for the Wolf Creek Recycle Depot services and residential curbside pickup, and then do so thereafter every 4 years to ensure the city is receiving fair market value for service and to provide an opportunity to reevaluate the condition of the recycling market. This is how we will get real pricing on every 4 years starting next year on what those things cost to operate. If prices are coming down or improvements to the system are going up, it's an opportunity to consider re-entering or reevaluating our current recommendation. Recommendation 7, review the Wolf Creek Recycle Depot cost-sharing formula with the county prior to the next ICF update. Recommendation 8, update the utility bylaw to prohibit commercial businesses from depositing yard waste at the Wolf Creek Recycle Depot. So this is tied to a recommendation which we'll get into a bit later, but currently it is legal and allowed under our bylaw for commercial operators to dispose of yard waste at the Wolf Creek Recycle Depot. And this really makes no sense. Residents of Lacombe are hiring a landscape company or any kind of company to remove and dispose of trees, branches, grass, could be anything, and they're paying that company. That company is then, if they bring it to the Wolf Creek Recycle Depot, they can dump it for free. So they can dump it in a stockpile at the Wolf Creek Recycle Depot. Then the city of Lacombe is hiring a contractor to load that material and take it to their compost facility, or in the case of diseased wood and a material that can't go to that compost facility, the city of Lacombe forces are then taking that material and loading it and transporting it to the Wolf Creek or to the Prentice transfer station. And so the residents are actually paying for the transport of that material twice, one to their contractor and again to the city. And so this recommendation is intended to prohibit the use of the Wolf Creek Recycle Depot by commercial operators. Their option would be to take that material to the Prentice transfer station, which is a few kilometers away. And since the material is already loaded onto their flat decks or into the back of their trucks, it is a mild inconvenience to have to go to the Prentice transfer station, but it is a recommendation that makes the most sense so that the residents of Lacombe are not having to pay twice for the hauling of that material. So that is part of Recommendation 8, or is Recommendation 8. Recommendation 9, for the city to continue to advocate for provincial and national solutions to incentivize recycling at the municipal level. So Lacombe has supported AUMA's effort to do this, and so we are going to monitor opportunities to continue to participate in advocacy through either AUMA or FCM or other ways in order to bring forward a more provincial or national solution to this issue. And our recommendation to council is just to continue that effort. So as I highlighted earlier in the presentation, the bin types in Lacombe are operationally efficient, and we are not recommending changes to the solid waste system for that reason, or partially that reason. When the city we've recently looked at quotes from private contractors to supply bins and haul solid waste from a neighborhood in Lacombe, and we found that their costs, when you apply the requisition rate from the Solid Waste Commission, are pretty close to what the city of Lacombe charges. So we're reasonably certain that on the cost of the private industry compared to the city of Lacombe's cost to provide solid waste collections they are in line. And so we have not done a citywide RFP to get real costs for the delivery of a private collection service across the city. Based on the information that we do have, it does show that the city of Lacombe's system is close to being in line, very close to being in line with what the costs of a private system would offer. And so because of the operational efficiency and because of that closeness in cost, we are recommending that the system essentially stay as is. The communal in-bin system be maintained, and we would use rollout bins only in areas where the communal lane bins are not feasible. So issue 5 is cardboard collection program. This is a system that is really only in the downtown area, and it is exclusively for cardboard. The material in those bins is collected by the city of Lacombe and transferred to the same recycling facility as the rest of the recycling material goes to in Red Deer. And because the material is very clean, and the company, Waste Management in this case, has indicated that they can give us a much cheaper rate to recycle that material at $70 per ton. And so because the material is clean, they don't have to process it at all. They essentially take that material and they bundle it right away, and they sell it. And so they charge the city of Lacombe $70 per ton to do that, which is significantly cheaper than the other recycling, the other mixed recycling material that ends up there. So with the diversionary credit, which this does count towards, that we get from the commission, the net cost of offering the cardboard collection program is only $6.33 a ton. Now that is exclusive of collections and haul costs provided by city forces, but as far as recycling goes, this is the most cost-effective recycling stream within the city by far. And so we are recommending that this be expanded to include industrial customers, where Tetra-Tech has observed a significant amount of cardboard waste being collected and being disposed of through the municipal waste stream at the Prentice landfill. And so if we can expand that program, it does make sense from a cost perspective to expand that program into the industrial area, capture more of that cardboard and reduce some of that material from getting to the landfill. It would be a good thing in this case. And so cardboard is one of those materials that are easily recyclable. It is still a very viable recyclable material, and so that is something we're more comfortable with expanding within the city of Lacombe. Issue number 6, inefficient routing. I've highlighted most of the reasons why this is an issue earlier on, but primarily due to residential growth. The garbage truck routes have become inefficient, resulting in more frequent but lighter loads being transported to the Lacombe Regional Waste Services Commission, and also less pickups per day compared to industry standards and historical City Hall data. So we've been able to pick up more per day in the past, and we've also been able to ensure our trucks are more fully loaded in the past than when compared to today. So we need to relook at those routes and ensure that they are efficient. That will likely mean some changes to the garbage days for some people, but that won't come for some time, and there will certainly be a lot of communication around any changes. But we do plan to look at that starting next year to try to develop a new route system, and we will be doing that using in-house expertise. So issue number 7 is a utility bylaw. And so right now, with our recommendation to not implement curbside recycling at this time, we need to update the utility bylaw to remove references to curbside recycling in that bylaw. And we also need to update the bylaw to prohibit the commercial companies from dumping yard and brush at the Wolf Creek Recycle Depot. So this is more or less a cleanup recommendation, but certainly it does does indicate that a utility bylaw amendment is forthcoming. So those are the recommendations coming out of the Solid Waste Review report. This report was done in alignment with Council's strategic plan, and goal number 4.3.3b, to review the current solid waste management model. Attached to the staff report that is included in one of the links, either in the description or in the Facebook post or the tweet, depending on how you've accessed this video, is the full report, the summarizing administrative request for decision, as well as an implementation plan which outlines where public communications on specific items are being planned, but also indicates a timeline for the implementation of the various recommendations that administration is recommending to Council. So that concludes the presentation on the Solid Waste Review. This will be decided on or deliberated by Council on June 15th. And certainly if you have any questions, please check out the links and the links included on this post, and we're happy to answer them. Take care and have a great day.